Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur, and we're going to be talking about the Norwegian sensation, Antonio NUSA. He has been heavily linked to Tottenham Hotspur. It looks like that we've already spoken to the agents in the club, maybe over two separate times already. Fabrizio Romano is all over this as well. So very good signs that Spurs are potentially leading the race and could actually land this guy this January. But it does look like we would end up actually loaning him back out for the rest of the season and then maybe bring him back in the summer. But he is a real talent, somebody that already has had two athletic articles posted about him, sort of with his come up and just sort of the stardom and sort of the potential around him. So I'm really looking forward to giving you guys all the information that I could find, everything that I could discover about this young talent. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. Don't watch the Jupiter Pro League or really the Norwegian League on a regular basis, but I did my digging, did my research, and I'm going to provide you this scout report from this channel at the Irish Hotspur. Smash that like button for us. Do get your comments in, everybody, and let me know your thoughts on Antonio NUSA. First things first, there's so much hype and potential around this guy. I've heard things such as the Norwegian Neymar, which I think is almost kind of too much pressure to really put on a guy like that, but definitely a very, very complimentary comparison there. I've heard some Wilfred Zaha comparisons from as well when I saw in a Twitter video just recently, and so when you're kind of getting those sort of type of comparisons, you're definitely thinking of a good dribbler, right? And also I've heard that he could potentially be a future Sonny replacement, or at least that's what some sources are thinking that Spurs are sort of seeing him as. That's a huge step. That's huge, a lot of potential there for sure. And also, like I brought up just earlier in the little intro, two athletic articles that have already been posted about the kid and sort of his rise, his potential, and everything. And he's only 18 years old, which is just really ridiculous. And I think there are lots of Norwegian Spurs fans actually out there as well. So please, everybody, let me know like your thoughts on this guy. Let me know if you've maybe discovered him before plenty of us, and now that he's sort of getting all this attention and is getting all this sort of rumors around Spurs and everything. Let us know if you're excited about this. Let me know if there's anything that I might be missing, anything that should be brought up, any sort of anecdotes or interesting points about Antonio NUSA, because I really would be curious to get some good sort of, facts from some of our fellow Norwegian Spurs fans, especially you, Daddy Larson, Daniel Larson. Let me know in those comments below if you're watching this video. Now, this kid's attention and hype really began straight away sort of in Norway. At 13 years old, it looked like he was traveling at least twice a week between his local hometown of Langhus and his club Stabæk, and it's a pretty decent journey. It looked like it was at least an hour by train and bus between that hometown and his club. And they were apparently at one stage actually having the coach, because they valued him so highly, they're having the coach, I think, drive him back and forth between training and his hometown, or where he was living with his family. And it looks like this kid is, just like I said from the very beginning, just been sort of a very talented and a guy that just sort of, I think, it's always just sort of caught people's eye, because even in a 2-2 draw with Inter Milan's academy when he was playing for Stabæk, this youth squad, the Inter's academy coach, Christian Chivu, personally visited their dressing room, Stabæk's dressing room, to tell him how exceptional of a player he was. And not, the team of Stabæk, actually specifically Antonio NUSA. He was telling him how specifically, exceptional he was, which really does, suggest that this kid, just straight from the get-go, has been receiving a lot of attention and a lot of hype. He scored in the Champions League as well before the age of 18 against FC Porto in the group stages for Club Brugge. I don't know how many players below the age of 18 have scored in the Champions League, but I still even think that alone is a ridiculous achievement. And they bought him as well for 3 million euros, Club Brugge, at the age of 16. Within a couple of seasons, they were actually receiving interest from other clubs around Europe after their original 3 million euro investment. So that's actually where, everybody, some of these valuations of around 30 million pounds, 25 million pounds are coming from, is because after only a couple of seasons, he was getting a lot of attention from around Europe. And by the way, everybody, Club Brugge has been producing some very big talents of recent, so it actually has been a bit of a factory and a great place for young talents to go develop, and especially if they're not even from, the very good Club Brugge Academy. It seems like it's just been a good destination for various players to go develop. For example, I think even Tejan Buchanan, the Canadian international, went there to go develop, and now he's over off at Inter Milan. And you also have Charles de Ketelaere, who came through their academy, if I'm not mistaken, Luis Openda, the Belgian international, who now plays for RB Leipzig, who's smashing it in the Bundesliga at the moment. You also have another player from Club Brugge as well, who developed there for some time, who's smashing it in the Bundesliga, named Odilan Kasunu. He's one of Xabi Alonso's really utilized and very valued and important center backs in his system. Noah Lang, of course, huge talent from the get-go and is over at PSV Eindhoven. And if you remember, Emmanuel Dennis, who had that great season over at Watford originally, I believe had came from Club Brugge, unless I'm mistaken. So it really has been a talent factory for producing their own own sort of players from their own academy, or even has been a destination for guys to develop and then maybe make a move to a bigger league or a bigger club after. But by the way, also, well, just a quick tangent. I am going to pronounce it as Club Brugge just because I was told by, I believe, somebody from The Guardian, or at least I overheard in a podcast on The Guardian, that it's more of a Flemish pronunciation. I could be totally wrong on this, and even I'm probably still pronouncing it wrong in some sort of manner, and it's not really as much what I was told, a French pronunciation, which would be more like a Club Bruges or something like that. So I could be totally wrong on this one, so I'm sorry if I have annoyed you at some stage with my pronunciations. But funny enough, Club Brugge, I feel like, have been sort of slipping kind of since they had that manager, I think a few years ago, by the name of Philippe Clement, who was actually taking them into the Champions League. He looked to be a real great manager, and he, I think, eventually left to Monaco, and now is, I believe, the Rangers manager. But right now, at this moment in time, in this season, they sit 14 points behind Union Saint-Gilloise in the Belgian Pro League, in the Jupiler Pro League, and they're really far behind. I think they're in fourth position at this moment in time, and normally I would associate them with being kind of more the favorites to win the league each season. I'm not going to say I pay attention to that league all that much, but normally they have been that sort of side to sort of be dominating, or at least be up there closer to the top instead of sitting down near fourth position. And so it has been a club that I think has been sort of slipping a little bit since Philippe Clement has left. Scott Parker, I believe, was at the club. He didn't do too well, got sacked quite quickly, and then it seems like even after his departure, they've sort of been kind of slipping season by season. And so it has been maybe a team that, or at least a club that maybe has needed to sort of cash in on guys like Antonio NUSA, just because, they're looking to maybe rebuild as well as just find a way to sort of climb right back up the table. So maybe now's the time to cash in on their brilliant talents like Antonio NUSA. Now, like I mentioned before, 18 years old, that £25 million evaluation does come from, I think, all the hype that he has received from the get-go since moving to Club Brugge, and it looks like they could be pretty much, I think they could get 10 times the original investment from what they got him for, and he's played 44 matches in total for Club Brugge, and last season he had only had 1 goal and 1 assist in very few minutes and very few starts, and this season he's picked up 4 goals and assists so far. So again, somebody that's very raw, maybe not producing a ton of goals or assists, but for how young he is and how talented he is, there definitely is a player there, and I'm sure that if given more time, more minutes, he will start to produce much more goals and assists. But this is where I really am interested in this guy, because he has terrific dribbling numbers. We're comparing him to all other attacking midfielders and wingers inside Europe's top 14 leagues. I kind of wish there was a function to just compare him to Europe's top 5 leagues of the Serie A, Bundesliga, Premier League, Liga, etc. But unfortunately, cannot do that. My stats I get mostly through FBref, and we're comparing him only to, and I would say actually comparing him only to Belgian Pro League players, just to me would be actually quite pointless, because I think his stats are already so impressive enough that it wouldn't really, I think, do us that much justice, or really be doing him that much justice, and kind of looking at those only. Instead, I think it might just be better just to compare him to throughout all the different leagues around Europe. And as well, with these stats, they're so high up there that you also have to really take them with a grain of salt, because I think, again, while they're still sitting in fourth position, they're going to be one of those teams that I would think are expecting to win most games, or at least expecting to dominate most games, except for maybe the teams around them. So you always will see then with that sort of situation, maybe stats that really might be a bit higher than, ones you might get from your average Premier League player, Bundesliga player. And I just think that's mostly because the competition can kind of just have such a huge drop off between sort of the top dogs of the league versus maybe the sort of lower end table kind of clubs. But like I said earlier, incredible dribbling numbers, truly very impressive. Top 1 percentile for successful take-ons, progressive carries into the penalty area. He's in the top 10 percentile for shot creating actions and goal creating actions per 90, as well as shots total per 90. And the only stats that maybe I was at least not as impressed by were his actual key passes and his crosses per 90. And a key pass is a pass that leads directly to a shot on goal. But those dribbling numbers, everybody, let's just get in on those. Those are absolutely incredible to see. 5 successful take-ons per 90 is just insane to be skinning past 5 guys a game. I don't even care if it's the Jupiler Pro League or whatever league in the world, just to be able to skin past a man 5 times must be very fun. Also, too, for a guy that's, again, only 18 years of age, to be able to do that to what would probably be pretty decent defenders, I think, on a regular basis, in that league. And I don't think I should be ripping on that league too much. So very impressive dribbling numbers, especially with how direct he seems to be with those touches in the attacking penalty area, those carries into the penalty area as well. Very, very big highlight there. Would definitely be on his dribbling skills. If we were to compare him to players currently at Tottenham Hotspur, for example, Brennan Johnson, you can see that he really does smash them in this per 90 department when it comes to the shots total, the dribbling numbers that we just mentioned before, some of the creative numbers, like even the shot creating actions. He's even doing better than Brennan Johnson in terms of key passes and crosses, and also as well as, weirdly enough, getting stuck in a bit more often with more tackles and interceptions, which does suggest to me that maybe Club Brugge are in fact pressing quite high up the pitch, and maybe he would be quite comfortable in playing in this sort of Ange Postecoglou system when it comes to working hard off the ball, because he's actually getting more tackles and interceptions than Brennan Johnson, which I'm actually quite impressed by. And I don't know if I can even explain that, because, you would think that with how high, Spurs forwards are pressing, that they would be able to, compare to him or even be better than him in that department. But maybe Club Brugge are sort of employing a similar style of play and are also getting their forwards and their attacking players to get involved in sort of the defensive numbers. But really, again, I would just sort of emphasize that when you're comparing these two very different leagues of the Premier League as well as the Jupiler Pro League, I mean, it's hard to make really bold conclusions, should I say, about the player versus our own. I think he has some incredible dribbling numbers there, and Brennan Johnson at the moment is only skinning past one player per match, whereas this guy once again is skinning past over 5 players per game. And I'm curious how Brennan Johnson would play in the club in the Jupiler Pro League. Would he be able to get 5 successful take-ons? But these are all very hypothetical. I can't really give a definitive answer on that. But what I would say is, when you just look at his raw numbers there, he's actually comparing quite well, is really showing, I think, the difference between that league and the Premier League, but also it's just showing that maybe he's, a real talent for a reason, because these numbers really truly are ridiculous. And when you see how they stack up against our own players, very impressive indeed. But then let's look into maybe Sonny here. Again, he's actually beating Sonny in a lot of these sort of numbers that I think would truly make, a winger. We're talking about dribbling numbers, the shot creating actions, the progressive carries, the carries into the penalty area, successful take-ons. I think these all sort of measure what makes a good winger, because we're looking at creative numbers and the key passes, the crosses. We're looking at as well, how good is he at taking it past his man? How direct can he be? All these sort of numbers I would think would be what makes a good winger as well in this sort of Ange Postecoglou system, because we want them to be direct. We want them to be taking on their fullbacks, trying to skim past them and make openings and create little spaces. And Antonio NUSA, for such a young player, really is exceptional at doing that, and the numbers do reflect that here. Now, if I were to give you guys a bit of a summary maybe on what sort of strengths and weaknesses I feel like he has in his game, I will say those 1v1 take-ons are very fun to watch. If you look at some of his highlights, he really has a terrific sort of, kind of sort of agility type move where he does that really beautiful cut inside and sort of just flows past players. There's a very sort of flowy type dribbling type of style, I would say. And also he has a very good type of array of ways to know how to cut inside past his player. And nowadays, right, most defenders know that these wingers do want to cut inside, but the way that he's just able to do it on a regular basis is very impressive, because he has sort of a variety of ways of doing it, either just sort of shifting his body weight, using a bit of flair there as well. I would definitely say that's a huge part of his asset. He does have some pretty fancy sort of kind of moves and just has a lot of technique, and just sort of seems to enjoy, using a bit of extra skills than maybe you see from most players nowadays. And he really takes advantage of his agility and his pace. I would say he's definitely a pacey player. Also, really would emphasize the agility too, and that is probably what makes his dribbling numbers so impressive. He has good close control, despite being maybe a bit of a taller sort of winger. He does have nice close control and has, a good ability to, touch it, in front of him, to maybe lure the defender in, and then, bring it nice and close just to touch it past him once again, to make it harder to take it off him. So he really does have a good sense of technique with how he carries the ball, and he's just good at creating space. And that's mostly, I would say, through his dribbling. He's good at just creating creating openings to either play somebody else, and work off somebody else in terms of, passing and creating moves, but also just maybe creating a move for himself, creating an opportunity to score, creating an opportunity to have a shot on goal. And he's just good at creating these little openings and creating these spaces with his defender just through this array of body movements and flair and agility and all those things that I mentioned from earlier. If I were to pick out weaknesses, and again, I would say take these with a grain of salt, because I'm not going to say that I'm going to be a guy that's watched him week in, week out or anything, but I saw that one really brilliant finish that he had with his left foot. Believe me, a very good finish. But when I saw from sort of other highlights, I wasn't really seeing too many left-footed shots, and I just don't know. Like I could maybe say that weak foot perhaps could be something that maybe he could work on. Also, just in general, like his shooting numbers. Yes, he gets an all right amount of shots on. He's in the top 10 percentile, like we mentioned before, but I would say he doesn't get as many of them as you would think on target. So he's not maybe, wouldn't say he's not clinical or anything, but maybe that's something that he could perhaps, still work on. Again, only 18 years old. So I'm really not going to, I'm going to emphasize, I'm not trying to be harsh here in any sort of regard, but if I were to look for weakness, maybe weak foot and maybe a tiny bit of finishing. And then aerial duels. He doesn't seem to be a guy that really is going to get sort of in the business when it comes to challenging his defender in that aerial department. And again, no shame in that. He's just not that sort of player at this moment in time, and he's using his strengths, as much as he can. And there will be other sort of elements of his game that will come out that he'll be able to develop over time. Still such a young player, still such a young talent, and that sort of about does it here on the scout report here, everybody. It's not really a player, again, that I'm going to say to claim to be a total expert on. I had to do a lot of digging, a lot of research. There's a lot of hype there about the kid, but there's only so many minutes of footage really available of him because he's only been around for so long. And then also, too, like he doesn't have a ton of goals and assists or anything like that either to really work with when you were looking back a lot of the highlights or anything, but he really does look to be sensational talent, and he looks to sort of fit a lot of what would make potentially a future Sonny replacement. That's kind of what this guy is supposed to be. He's supposed to be somebody that's supposed to come in here, develop at Spurs to eventually take the reins in that sort of left wing position from Heung-Min's son, which just seems like almost an impossible task and impossible pair of shoes to fill. But he does have really good dribbling numbers, really good directness to his game, seems to have, a bit of strength to him as well that would sort of suit, I think, the Premier League. He definitely looks bigger, or at least, older than most sort of 18-year-olds, I would say, as well. And you just hope that he can in some way, kind of replicate what Sonny was able to do here at Spurs with either just sort of the dribbling style. I mean, the finishing, I'm not sure if he'd be able to do that because Sonny's one of the best finishers I've ever seen in my lifetime, but it is exciting to see Spurs kind of linked with such a really hyped player, such a high potential player, somebody that a lot of people who do sort of follow these younger European hidden talents have really been hyping up for a long time. Again, to have over 2 athletic articles about you already before the age of 18 is pretty ridiculous to me. So this looks to be a real coup of a signing if we're able to get it done. It looked like, I think, Newcastle or some sort of club might be crashing in on this, could perhaps be hijacking this deal from us. But I am really excited about this signing. And I'm just going to give my thumbs up of approval for it because he just looks to be a really sought after generational talent. And also, too, I would mention that Norway have been recently producing a bit of a golden generation. You look at Martin Odegaard, Erling Haaland, as well as, Oscar Bob over at Man City. And I know there are actually a couple others that I'm definitely forgetting and not mentioning, too. So we could be tapping into this golden generation of Norwegian players, too. But everybody wanted to keep this just sort of, I don't know, not as stat heavy or anything like that because I felt like, his stats are pretty ridiculous. And when you look at that sort of Belgian Pro League, I think you got to take a little bit with a grain of salt, but I'm not going to in any way put down or any way, sort of be harsh towards the stats because I think they were actually really impressive regardless. But this is my scout report on Antonio NUSA. Let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know whether you think he can replace Sonny and be that future Sonny replacement, which we do have to talk about. We do have to think about. And let me know if he can live up to the hype of being the Norwegian Neymar. I mean, what a great thing to say, but definitely an unneeded sort of type of title or type of, pressure and influence to put on the kid. But he seems like from the get-go, from the age of 13, to be a very motivated player and a very motivated guy and looks to be climbing through sort of the ranks and eventually make a big move to the Premier League, hopefully. So Antonio NUSA, I hope to say at some stage in the near future, if we can get this deal done, welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, and I wish this kid the best of luck in the rest of his career. Smash that like button for me, everybody. In the big Ange, we trust. Come on, you Spurs. We never stop, and I'll be seeing you.